In this video, I'm going to talk to you about signs that your ex still has feelings for you. But before we dive in, I want you to pause with me for a moment, not just to listen, but to feel. Because what we're about to explore goes deeper than just behavior patterns or emotional guesswork. This isn't about decoding text messages or wondering if a glance meant something more. This is about understanding the quiet tension that lingers when love ends, but doesn't fully let go. The truth is, most people underestimate how deeply they still live in their ex's mind, especially after a meaningful relationship. And not because there's drama, but because there was once closeness, shared laughter, familiar mornings, a life that for a time moved in rhythm. And when that rhythm is broken, when the calls stop and the silence sets in, that's when something deeper starts to stir in the one who left. You see, love doesn't end like a light switch. Even when it fades, it often leaves traces. Traces that resurface when you least expect them. A name, a song, a silence louder than any argument. And it's in those moments that the person who once walked away may begin to feel pulled back towards something they thought they could easily forget. So if you've ever asked yourself, do they still think about me? You're not alone. But the answer isn't found in overanalyzing or chasing. It's found in observing the small signs, in reading what's left unspoken, and, most of all, in honoring the growth that happens in your stillness. If you're ready to explore what those signs truly mean and how to respond from a place of calm, clarity, and quiet strength, stay with me. And if this kind of message speaks to where you are right now, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Now, let's dive in. Sign number 1. They initiate contact with you. When your ex reaches out, especially more than once, it's easy to dismiss it as politeness, habit, or mere curiosity. But in most cases, when someone who once walked away takes the first step back, whether through a text, a reaction on your story, or a "hey, just checking in" message, it's rarely random. Beneath the surface of those casual words often lies a more complex emotional undercurrent. It's their way of quietly saying, "I feel your absence more than I expected." The dynamic has shifted. They were used to a version of you that showed up consistently, texting first, making plans, holding the thread of connection together. You became a part of their daily rhythm, even if they had stopped appreciating it near the end. Your good morning texts, your thoughts during the day, your attention, it all became familiar background noise they assumed would never fade. But when it does, when your presence turns into silence, something begins to stir in them. That silence isn't just empty space. It's a weight. It's noticeable. It changes the emotional atmosphere. They're used to their phone vibrating and it being a text from you, so when that doesn't happen, it's like a magnet. This shift catches them off guard because they expected you to reach out. They expected the old dynamic to hold, that you would keep trying, keep chasing, keep proving your love even in your absence. But you didn't. And that choice, the choice to step back with calm, quiet certainty instead of neediness, disrupts their expectations. You didn't chase. You didn't even explain. And that's what shattered her expectation. Not your pain, but your poise. People rarely expect strength to show up as silence. They think detachment looks like anger or coldness. But when it comes from a place of clarity, when it's not punishment but peace, it changes the game. It forces them to reevaluate who you are and what your absence actually means. Suddenly, the power dynamic tilts. They're no longer the one who left. They're now the one trying to decipher why you're no longer fighting for them. And that's when the contact begins. It may start subtle, liking an old post, replying to a story with a smiley face, forwarding a meme you might like. None of it says, "I want you back," but all of it says, "I still think about you." Because when people miss someone, they rarely say it outright. They test the waters. They knock lightly before they open the door again. They want to see if you'll respond, if the door is still open, if your world has continued without them. There's something deeply unsettling for the person who walked away to realize the other person didn't fall apart. They thought they held all the power, but power doesn't lie in who leaves. It lies in who transforms. And transformation begins the moment you stop seeking validation and start honoring your own value. That's the paradox. The more you chase, the more they feel justified in leaving. The more you step back, the more they begin to question. It's not about playing games, it's about breaking patterns. Because chasing someone who left is a habit rooted in fear, but letting go without resentment is an act rooted in strength. And make no mistake, they feel it. That moment you stopped reaching out, they noticed. That moment you didn't reply right away, they noticed. That moment you didn't ask for closure, didn't send a long message explaining how much it still hurts. That's when their curiosity turned into confusion. And confusion often precedes regret. So when they text you, seemingly out of the blue, don't be surprised. That "Hey, just thinking about you" message might carry more weight than they're willing to admit. Because now, for the first time, they're wondering if they're the one being left behind. They're beginning to feel what they assumed only you would feel: the echo of absence, the sting of silence. You're not doing this to manipulate. You're doing it because you've grown. You've taken the pain and turned it into presence. And that presence doesn't beg. It doesn't explain itself. It just is. Let them initiate. Let them reach. But don't rush to fill the silence they once created. Let them walk into the quiet they thought would never come. Because if they truly still have feelings for you, if the connection still lingers beneath their pride, their logic, their reasons, it won't be the lack of contact that pushes them away. It will be the realization that the man they left behind has become a man they're no longer sure how to approach. And that's the power of restraint. That's the power of emotional maturity. They're not reaching out because they're being nice. They're reaching out because they feel something they can't explain. And while their words may be casual, their actions speak loudly. You just have to be grounded enough not to be shaken by them. Let them wonder why you didn't chase. Let them feel the weight of their own decision. And when they reach out again, and they will, you'll know that this time it wasn't about your need for them. It was about their rediscovery of what they lost. Sign number 2. They're curious about your life. After a breakup, people often expect their absence to leave a mark. Maybe some visible unraveling, emotional outreach, or at the very least, a reaction. What they don't expect is quiet. What they rarely anticipate is your calm detachment. And that's exactly what begins to disturb their assumptions. They were used to your presence, not just your physical availability, but your emotional investment. You used to check in, you used to share, you used to make space for them in your life, your thoughts, your world. But now, there's distance. Not just geographic or relational, but emotional distance, and it's unfamiliar to them, unsettling even. Suddenly they begin to ask around, maybe through a mutual friend, maybe through subtle stalking, scrolling through your posts, watching your stories, looking for signs. They may not say much, but they're looking because they're curious. Curious about what you're doing, where your attention is going, and more importantly, how you're doing without them. But this curiosity isn't just casual interest, it's longing in disguise. Because what they're really trying to figure out is whether you've moved on, or whether there's still a part of your life where they exist, even in memory. They want to know if they still echo in your silence, if they still live in your thoughts the way you once lived in theirs, It's no longer about missing habits or routines. It's about missing you, the emotional intimacy, the conversations that went deeper than small talk, the comfort of knowing someone understood them without asking too many questions. They don't just miss what you did, they miss how you made them feel, that sense of being seen, heard, and accepted. And now that absence is deafening. You didn't chase, you didn't even explain, and that's what shattered her expectation. Not your pain, but your poise, because they expected reaction. They expected you to ask why, to plead for understanding, to try and fix what they broke. But instead you stayed still, you went inward, you rebuilt, and that confuses them more than any speech ever could. It makes them question the certainty they once felt when they walked away. Now they're trying to peek behind the curtain to see who you've become when they stopped watching. And if you've done the work, that version of you is stronger, calmer, more grounded. You don't owe them updates. You don't need to perform healing for their validation, but make no mistake, they notice the silence, they feel the distance, and they're wondering what's changed and why you no longer need to share it with them. That curiosity? It's the beginning of realization, and that realization always starts when your absence speaks louder than any words ever could. Sign number 3. They keep photos of you together. Photos aren't just images, they're emotional timestamps, quiet echoes of who we were, how we felt, and what we once believed would last. And when someone chooses to keep the photos of the two of you together, especially long after the relationship has ended, it's not simply about preserving a memory, it's about holding on to a piece of something they haven't fully let go of. People often claim they keep old photos for nostalgia, or because they view their social media like a scrapbook. But that explanation starts to unravel when you notice the pattern. They've deleted photos of previous exes without hesitation, but yours remain. That's not routine. That's resistance. That's unresolved feeling disguised as digital neutrality. Because deep down they know removing a photo isn't just a click. It's closure, and closure is terrifying when the heart isn't certain it made the right decision. They just can't bring themselves to erase you from their history and from their life. Every photo they scroll past becomes a quiet tug on their emotions. Each one whispers a version of the past they aren't ready to bury. And though they may not say a word about it, their inaction speaks volumes. It says they're still tied to the person they were when they were with you. It says the connection still lingers, even if it lives now only through pixels and memories. Keeping those photos is rarely about aesthetics. It's about hesitation. It's about not being ready to delete the chapter where you were both still whole. Sign number 4. They bring up shared memories. There's something revealing about the way the past slips into present conversation. When your ex begins to bring up shared memories, moments that seemed small at the time but now echo with meaning, it's not just sentimentality, it's emotional gravity. It's them reaching for a feeling that no longer exists in their current world, hoping that by speaking it aloud, they might momentarily touch it again. Remember that night we got caught in the rain? Every time I pass that old cafe, I think of you. These aren't just words, they're signals. The brain might remember facts, but the heart only holds on to what it misses. And when those memories resurface, uninvited but persistent, it's because something in them hasn't moved on as cleanly as they once thought. They aren't merely recalling a place or a moment. They're chasing the emotional safety, the connection, the aliveness that existed in that chapter with you. This is one of the most powerful signs, because memory is not neutral. It's selective, emotionally triggered, and often involuntary. No one talks about the things that meant nothing. They revisit what left a mark. And if they're bringing those moments up now, it's because part of them wants to feel again what they could only feel when you were around. But that doesn't mean it's time to engage or to rush the process. Just because you smell a cake in the air doesn't mean it's time to take it out of the oven. Let it rise, let it finish, let them sit with the realization a little longer. Premature action only short-circuits a process that was finally beginning to unfold. Let the memory do its work. Let it stir. Let it soften them. Your silence is not absence. It's presence in its most powerful form. Sign number 5. They ask if you still talk about them. Sometimes it doesn't come directly. It comes through a friend who mentions almost offhandedly that your ex asked how you're doing. Or maybe they frame it as a joke, slipping in a line like, "I bet you still talk about me," with a half smile that masks something deeper. But the question, however it's delivered, always carries the same unspoken weight. They want to know if they still live in your mind. At first glance, it may seem like simple curiosity, but it isn't. It's something more vulnerable than that. It's the quiet fear of being forgotten. It's their way of reaching out without fully admitting they care. Because if they truly didn't, they wouldn't be concerned about your conversations, your thoughts, or your lingering emotions. The fact that they wonder whether you still mention them behind closed doors is proof that, emotionally, they haven't fully closed that chapter. They're wondering who you are now, without them in your life, and whether they still occupy any meaningful space in the world you've rebuilt. And what makes that curiosity sting even more for them is the unexpected silence they've received in return. They probably thought you'd be chasing, begging, but you didn't. And now they're trying to figure out where they stand with you. That shift unsettles them. The one who left is now unsure. The one who was once left behind now walks forward without needing to look back. And that reversal, that quiet transformation, is where your strength reveals itself. You didn't force it. You didn't try to prove anything. You simply stopped giving away your energy to someone who wasn't ready to receive it. Now they're not just missing the attention, they're missing the certainty. They're trying to locate themselves in your story again, only to find the pages have continued without their name being written in bold. And that's where the power shifts. Not because you tried to take it back, but because you grew beyond needing to hold on. So now what? You've seen the signs, the texts, the questions through friends, the subtle reminders that they still carry pieces of what you once were together. And yes, it's tempting to act, to lean in, to respond with the same hope that maybe, just maybe, they're realizing their mistake. But here's what you must understand. Just because someone begins to feel your absence doesn't mean they're ready for your presence again. Not yet. You don't need to prove anything. They'll feel it. Let them feel what it's like to miss a version of you that no longer begs for clarity. Let them wonder what it means when the man who once poured himself into saving the relationship now offers only silence. And not the angry kind, but the kind that comes from self-respect. Because that silence carries power. It speaks of growth, of a shift they never anticipated. They probably thought you'd be chasing, explaining, justifying. They thought you'd try to fight your way back in, but you didn't. And that alone begins to shift everything. That's when their curiosity turns into confusion, and then into regret. And if this was an unnecessary breakup, the kind driven by pressure from family, education, career, or misguided fear, then these signs carry even more weight. Sometimes they didn't leave because they stopped caring. They left because someone told them it was the right thing to do. Because they thought distance would create opportunity, because they believed love was something that could be paused while they pursued a version of success they hadn't yet defined for themselves. But eventually, the shine of those reasons starts to fade. They get into that new job, that new school, that new routine, and they realize life didn't become magical just because they left. Instead, It became quieter, more ordinary, and now, in the stillness of their success, they begin to remember what made life feel alive, and who they used to be when they were with you. That's why these signs, curiosity, nostalgia, hesitation, are so important in those cases, because what they're feeling now isn't just regret. It's the echo of a decision they never truly believed in. And now they're trying to feel their way back towards something they pushed away too soon. But that doesn't mean you run to meet them halfway. Not yet. Just because you smell a cake in the air doesn't mean it's time to take it out of the oven. Let them stay in that realization. Let the discomfort do its job. If they come back too quickly, if you make it too easy, they'll forget why they missed you in the first place. It has to feel real, earned. Otherwise, the cycle repeats. Your job isn't to monitor their every move or wait for another sign. Your job is to become the man who no longer needs to look backward. Focus on becoming magnetic. In how you speak, slow, grounded, intentional. In how you move, with purpose, not urgency. In how you live, with clarity and quiet strength, not noise. Because when they finally look back, and they will, it won't be your words that draw them in. It won't be the messages you never sent or the calls you never made. It'll be your energy, your evolution, the undeniable sense that you didn't just heal, you transformed. And if they do come back, it won't be because you begged. It'll be because they realized they walked away from something irreplaceable. And now they're wondering if it's still within reach. But you'll be too busy becoming to chase what was. And that is your power. That is your freedom. And that is the version of you worth returning to, if they're ready. That's all for now, but I hope something in this message spoke to where you are and gave you a sense of clarity or calm. If it did, take a moment to reflect. And if you have questions, leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. For more content on attraction, emotional strength, relationship dynamics and self-mastery, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station. This journey isn't about chasing anyone, it's about returning to yourself. And I'll be here to walk that path with you, one step at a time.